All these voices. All these voices. All these things you can't explain. All these painful memories. They keep haunting you and daunting me. It's just a ghost of you and me. It's just a smoking gasoline. It's just a ghost of you and me. Of you and me. All these whispers. All these footsteps in the rain. All these shadows in my mind. With my reflection I can't find. It's just a ghost of you and me. It's just a smoking gasoline. It's just a ghost of you and me. Of you and me. Don't let them take you away. Don't let them bring you down inside. It's just the mirrors in your mind. Don't let them bring you down.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me as always is former warlock and coven leader, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I'm pretty good. How is our listeners doing tonight? Misfits, sugar ladies, and demon hunters. I'm doing pretty good, brother. How you doing?
I'm excited tonight because we're going to get to talk about a pretty cool topic. This topic is something that me and old boy covered on a previous episode of the Writer's Block, where we went into a really in-depth history of it, and I mean way more detail than we're going to do tonight. Tonight we're going to give you an overview of it, and we're going to talk about some brand new evidence that has come out that is very intriguing if it's true. So we're going to discuss that as well. Tonight's topic is going to be the Nephilim, or the Nephilim in Hebrew. Basically what the Nephilim are giants. That's the easiest way to say it. That's what we would think of them as if we saw them. They are giants. And it's something that's actually biblical. And the story goes that God sent angels to earth to observe and watch over mankind. Now, while the angels were here, they saw some women, and they were smitten by them, and they fell in love. And they did what, males do when they see females that they fall in love. They got together with them, and they made babies, basically. They mated together. And the Nephilim were the result of that union between angels and human women. In the Bible, the original Nephilim were 500 feet tall. As time went on and they breeded with each other, and as they got even smaller, they started breeding with humans as well. The size shrunk considerably. It went from 500 feet tall to 250 foot tall to 100 foot tall. In the time of King David, everybody knows that famous story, David and Goliath, from the Bible. In the time of David versus Goliath, Goliath was like 11 foot tall at that time. So they had already shrunk at that point from 500 feet all the way down to anywhere between 10 and 15 feet. That's kind of where they are today. I think that's kind of their rock bottom point, is in between 10 and 15 feet. Like I said, Goliath was around 11. And everybody knows that story, that he was the champion of the other side, and David slew him with a rock from a slingshot. Everybody knows that biblical story. So in the Bible, it's well documented that giants actually existed, and the Nephilim is what they were. I'm going to read you something from Genesis 6, verses 1 through 4. This is directly from the Bible. It's the New Revised Standard Version, though. When people began to multiply on the face of the ground, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves of all that they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not abide in mortals forever, for they are flesh. Their days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. When the sons of God went into the daughters of humans, who bore children to them, these were the heroes that were of old, warriors of renown. Now, the sons of God are the angels. So basically what they're saying here in Genesis is that the angels took human wives and bore children. Not the angels bore children, but the wives bore the children. And the children were the Nephilim. To me, that's almost the best evidence you can have as far as historical evidence. You know what I mean? Now, there's a lot of other historical evidence as well. There are tons of different skeletons that have been dug up and found of human remains or human-like remains that were anywhere from 10 to 15 feet tall. And that's going to bring us to our first news story that I wanted to read you tonight. One of the pieces of new evidence. The headline of this news story is Smithsonian admits to destruction of thousands of giant human skeletons in the early 1900s. A ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court has forced the Smithsonian Institution to release classified documents dating from the early 1900s, proving the organization had been involved in a historical cover-up of evidence showing giant human remains in the tens of thousands that were uncovered across America that were ordered to be destroyed by upper-level administrators to ensure protection of the mainstream chronology of human evolution in that time. Allegations were made by the American Institution of Alternate Archaeology that the Smithsonian Institution had destroyed thousands of so-called giant human remains during the early 1900s, and it wasn't taken so well by the Smithsonian, who reacted by suing the organization for defamation and the damage of the 168-year-old institution. During the court case, new evidence was brought in as several Smithsonian whistleblowers admitted to the existence of documents that allegedly proved the destruction of tens of thousands of human skeletons, reaching between 6 feet and 12 feet in height, a reality mainstream archaeology cannot admit to for different reasons, claims the AIAA spokesman James Sherwood. This is a quote. There has been a major cover-up by Western archaeological institutions since the early 1900s to make us believe that America was first colonized by Asian peoples migrating through the Bering Strait 15,000 years ago, when in fact there are hundreds of thousands of burial mounds all over America, which the natives claim were there a long time before them, and that show traces of a highly developed civilization. Complex use of metal alloys, and where giant human skeletal remains are frequently found but still go unreported in the media and news outlets. A turning point of the case was when a 1.3 meter long human femur bone was shown as evidence in court of the existence of such giant human bones. The evidence came as a blow to the Smithsonian's lawyers, as the bone had been stolen from the Smithsonian by one of their high-level curators in the mid-1930s, who had kept the bone all of his life and admitted on his deathbed in writing of the other undercover operations of the Smithsonian. Quote, "It is a terrible thing that is being done to the American people," he wrote in his letter. "We are hiding the truth about the forefathers of humanity, our ancestors, the giants who roamed the earth as recalled in the Bible and ancient texts of the world." The U.S. Supreme Court has forced the Smithsonian Institution to publicly release all classified information about anything related to the destruction of evidence pertaining to the mound builder culture, and to elements relative to human skeletons of greater height than usual, a ruling the AIAA is highly enthusiastic about. The public release of these documents will help archaeologists and historians reevaluate current theories about human evolution and help us greater our understanding of the mound builder culture in America and around the world, explains AIAA Director Hans Gutenberg. Finally, after over a century of lies, the truth about our giant ancestors shall be revealed to the world, he acknowledges, visibly satisfied by the court ruling. Those documents are set to be revealed to the public in 2017, and the operation will be conducted by an independent scientific organization to ensure political neutrality. So, in this article, we find that the Smithsonian has destroyed tens of thousands of giant human skeletal remains. According to whistleblowers from inside the Smithsonian and according to the court documents, there were human remains in excess of 12 feet that were destroyed by the Smithsonian. Now, the tallest man on record in the world is like 8 foot 11 inches. A 12-foot human skeleton would shatter that record by 3 feet. Okay? So this is proof that giants existed. Point blank. Now, these documents are set to be released here very soon. And when they are released, I look forward to that day so much, because I want to pour through these documents. I want to study them and see exactly what they contain. Because as everybody knows on this show, we are all about the evidence. We are all about trying to find the truth. Now, there is a possibility that this story is being blown out of proportion. I have not seen the documents myself as of yet, because they have not been released. They've been released in court, but they have not been released to the general public yet. So when that day comes that they are, I will definitely look them over, and I will bring you news of that on a later show. So that is the first news story that we wanted to talk about. The second thing that I wanted to talk about that's new evidence that came out kind of blew me away, because this wasn't just a story that was written by somebody or some court case with documents that I haven't seen yet. This bit of evidence was actually video that I saw, which was pretty amazing. It took place during one of those riots where they had the Black Lives Matter riots, where they were protesting the shooting of some person or another. And during that time period, a bunch of looters and rioters were trying to destroy this one building, this store. And a group of people showed up to stop them. Now, I'm not exactly sure who this group of people were, because I didn't see any vehicles that had insignias or anything on them in the video. But they were all dressed in tactical gear. They had black tactical gear on, they had the vest, they had, the whole outfit, the helmet, everything. So either they were SWAT or they were some form of a military unit of some type. And they showed up to stop the looters. Now, the looting and rioting was taking place in the front of the store. The video was set on the side of the store, is where it was filming. So you could hear what was going on in the front of the store, and you could see a little bit of a disturbance up there, but you couldn't quite make out what was going on in the front of the store. Now, where this video gets interesting is the tactical unit comes into the shot. They enter from the left side, and you have several normal-sized people that are dressed all in the tactical gear that run up and hide behind this car. And one of them goes up to the building. There's a car, there's the side wall of the building, and it goes around to the front. So they're standing on the side wall, shielding themselves by the wall. The second group comes up, the rest of the group comes up, and in that grouping of people is what I can only describe as a giant. The average person in America is in between 5 and 6 feet tall. Some are above that, some are below that. But that's where they usually fall. The average SWAT officer or military officer is closer to the 6-foot range, and they're usually pretty big guys. You don't have a whole lot of tiny people that are doing that job. Now, among this group of the second wave of these guys was a guy that was a giant. He was twice as tall, at least twice as tall, as everybody else that was standing there. All of the other people, like the military unit or the SWAT, whoever they were, the rest of them only came up to this guy's waist. He towered above them. So he was at least twice as tall, maybe a little bit more. So if you take the average height of 5 to 6 feet, and the average height, if you want to put an actual number on it, is closer to 6 feet than 5 foot, but I'm going to give it a whole foot-long range here just for the sake of argument. So if you take that average height and you multiply it by 2, because he's twice as tall as them, then you're going to get a height for this guy of 10 to 12 feet tall, which is a full foot taller than the tallest man on record. Now, I think that that guy was probably a giant, a Nephilim. Because somebody that large is not going to be doing something where he's unnoticed. You know what I mean? If there was a guy that was that size, we would know about it. It wouldn't be like, oh, well, he's just some guy. You know what I mean? And it's not necessarily just because he's in a military unit or because he's in a SWAT unit. I mean, no matter what he did, if he sold ice cream, if he worked at 7-Eleven, whatever he did, everybody would know who this guy was because he's gigantic. I mean, he's way taller than everybody else. So we would all know who he was. There would be news stories on him, all that kind of stuff. But there isn't. So I have to ask myself, why not? If you have somebody that large, why does nobody know who this guy is? And that makes me think it's got to be some kind of government thing. You know what I mean? Because a regular police unit, a SWAT unit, is not going to have secrets like that. They're not going to have some guy that they're keeping secret from everybody else, some special weapon they keep in reserve to only bring out when they absolutely have to, right? That's just not going to happen. So that makes me think that it has to be some form of military thing that's going on here, some government thing. So that makes me think, is this either a Nephilim that has joined our side, or is this an experiment, some kind of genetic cloning or genetic engineering that has created this larger than life guy? I don't know what it was, but what I do know is I saw it with my own eyes. So he exists. He's there. I just don't know who he is or where he is. I tried really hard to find out who this guy was and to find out what the complete and total story of that video was. I can't find anything else on it. All I saw was the video. Now, when I first saw it, it was in a YouTube video. And they only showed, I don't know, maybe a minute, 30 seconds a minute of the footage. So you didn't get to see a whole lot. It was just enough to get to see the guy and be like, oh my God, that's a big guy. Now, I spent 2 or 3 days trying to find this footage. And I finally tracked down the raw footage. And in that footage, that's all about like 2 minutes long. So it's a little bit longer than what I saw originally. And in that footage, you can plainly see that the guy is twice as tall as everybody else. And you get to see him a little bit longer. You get to see him run across. You get to see him hide by the wall. And then they kind of fan out from the wall and they go around the front of the building to do whatever they're going to do to the looters or whatever they did that day. They went around the corner and we don't see him again in the video. But you got to see him a little bit more. So you got to see him run around and you got to see him move. So you could tell by watching that it wasn't some kind of weird special effect. You know, it wasn't CGI. It wasn't some guy that, you know, was on stilts or something like that to make him look taller. This guy was a guy. He just ran around. You know what I mean? So it looked real to me. But like I said, I couldn't find anything else on it, but it was very, very intriguing. Now, the last piece of evidence that's new that I want to talk about real quick was a story that was brought out by a member of our military that is serving in Afghanistan. Or at least at the time he was serving in Afghanistan. According to this gentleman, they got called out to do a patrol. And there was reports that there was something going on in that area, some kind of strange occurrences, and they didn't know exactly what was happening. They didn't know if it was Taliban, they didn't know if it was terrorists, they didn't know what was going on, but there was some weird chatter going on, and they didn't know exactly what was happening. So they went out on a patrol to try to gather info and find out what's happening. So they're patrolling around. They come up to this cave area, and out of this cave runs a 15-foot tall giant. Okay, according to the member of the military, he had 6 fingers on one of his hands, and he had fiery red hair. This guy came out of there wearing like furs and stuff, like a caveman looking guy. And he had this gigantic spear. And one of the soldiers was actually killed by the giant. He actually thrust the spear through the guy's chest and killed him. A firefight ensued, and our soldiers ended up killing this giant, shooting him dead. It took a lot of rounds, but they killed him. So they called it in, and a chopper shows up with a gigantic cargo netting underneath of it that's attached to it. They load the giant onto the cargo netting and they fly away with it. That's the last that the soldier ever heard of it. He didn't know what happened after that point. They took the giant away, that was it. The soldier that got killed, they claimed got killed in a friendly fire incident. So it was covered up, the whole thing was covered up as far as what happened with the giant and all that. There was no official report made about the giant, but this is what the guy says happened on that patrol. Now, I heard this story and I watched the guy talking about it, the actual soldier talking about it, and I thought that's interesting, but I'm not sure if it's true or not, but it's interesting. So then a couple weeks later, out comes another report. This report is by another member of the military in Afghanistan, but this guy was actually one of the pilots that flew the chopper that took the Nephilim away. He says that they got the call that they had the guy down, that he was dead. They came to pick the giant up. After he was loaded, they flew off with him, and they flew to an airfield where they landed and they dropped off the giant with some scientists that loaded him up in a truck and took him away. And that's the last that guy ever saw or heard of it. So here you have two different reports by members of the military that say this event happened. So I don't know what happened after that point, because there's never been anybody else that came out and said anything. But I would imagine if things stay the way that they usually operate in these cases, then most likely the giant got taken to a lab somewhere where he was dissected and all these experiments were run on him and everything to try to figure out what they are, how they work, all that kind of stuff. That's usually what they do. You hear that a lot in the alien field, where they do autopsies and try to steal their tech and reverse engineer it and all that kind of stuff. So most likely that's what ended up happening to the giant, is they chopped him up and autopsied him and did whatever scientists do to him. I would love to hear the rest of that story, but we probably never will. But to me, it was extremely interesting that you had two members of the military that were coming out and saying this happened. If it was one, I would say, well, maybe he's just making it up. But to have another guy come out and verify and corroborate what the first guy said, and they're risking everything. I mean, they're risking their pensions, they're risking their careers, they're risking it all to come out and say this. So it makes me wonder. I mean, that's very, very interesting, and we've heard a lot of stories like that before. We've heard stories in like third world countries where these things are living in caves and away from people, and every once in a while you have one that you hear about that they killed because he started becoming a problem or whatever, so they killed him. But we never have a body to show for it. We can never say, look, here it is. You know what I mean? The interesting thing about the first story I read you was that there's evidence that there were skeletons that were destroyed. And they actually presented a leg bone, a femur bone, which is the large bone in your upper leg. They actually presented a femur bone as evidence in court of one of these Nephilim. So there's actual physical evidence of them on record now, which is very, very cool. So those are the stories that I wanted to share real quick. And I'm going to throw over to Old Boy and let him talk about Nephilim a little bit, because he's got a lot to add as well. And maybe he'll comment on these stories as well, what he thinks of them.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. And good evening, guys. Well, let me get into this first. That there's other things I believe the Nephilim are. It could be, it's not just that they're the fallen angels, and they're 500 feet tall. I believe that could be a possibility, but like I've sent him evidence earlier today about Planet X, I don't know if he actually listened to it or not. Did you, James?
No, I didn't get to listen to that today. I was a very busy man today.
Well, it's talking about the Nephilim came from another planet. And I've sent him, that was what we were talking about the other day, so I sent him some proof. There was proof that they could be from another planet called Planet X. It's actually got another name, but I don't know how to say the name, and I'm not going to try. So they think they might come back, and in the Bible it talks about that they may come back to destroy the world. That could be the whole thing of the end of the world and stuff. They could help, the devil or whatever, because the Nephilim were not good. They might have came from angels and humans, but they weren't good. So, and they average between 500 to now 12 to 15 feet. I've seen what he's talking about I finally got to catch that today. With the giant that was in the riots in the back with the SWAT team. And the SWAT team members look like, with the helmets and everything, look over 6 feet tall. And what they were trying to say is, I guess there's like a little sidewalk. It goes up like a foot. Oh, he was standing on it. They showed his 1 foot was off. And his heel was laying on the sidewalk. He must have been 11 feet tall or more. And he was huge. And he's kind of crouching down, so he's kind of bigger than that. He might be 12 feet tall. I believe that was a Nephilim. I believe the Nephilim are involved with the government some way or another. And the whole rush with the guy in Afghanistan, the military, I actually had a talk with somebody about this. And he was talking about Gilgamesh, where they originally came from. And they actually found something, and I found this out by reading, and I talked to somebody who was telling me pretty much the same story James was about the red-haired giant. Well, apparently the red-eyed giant had killed a couple Marines before this. That's why they were sending that team out. And then he killed the other. He was eating them. And then he killed the other, and then he ended up getting killed, and then the government came and picked him up in a net. You never seen him again. I saw that one you're talking about with the airplane, the helicopter pilot. It was pretty interesting. But there's more to that story. Apparently, he had killed a couple of the Marines and ate them. Apparently, they're very mean and they're cannibalistic. So, that's why they killed him. He actually killed a soldier, then he shot him. After a firefight. It wasn't much of a fight because we have guns. But apparently, they killed him. But they were always over. They knew this was there. They have caves there, and Gilgamesh was supposed to be their original. When that was the original settings back in thousands of years ago, where they actually found that they might think there's statues down there in this big old cave in Afghanistan over there, and that's why that thing was there, and they think there's more in there. So these things have been around forever, and if you think about it, it says it in the Bible, behemoths, and they also talk about the Leviathan. I don't want to get too much into the Bible. But they talk about giants like James Hershey says in the Bible about the Nephilim. And they were giant. And they were humongous. And they weren't nice. So I wouldn't want to meet them. They probably would have ate me or something, I don't know. Try to be funny, but yeah, like some of these things, and the whole way like they said, he started because they fell in love with the daughters of man. They were beautiful, so they ended up, having kids, and they started getting smaller and smaller. But there's also some stuff like people finding skeletons, like he was saying, they're getting destroyed. But there's other things they found, like with 12-foot giants and skeletons and femur bones and all kinds of ribs. There are in between the size of 7.6 feet to 18 feet. And they destroyed them years ago. And they did it for purpose. They were told to do that because they don't want the truth to come out. They might be an interest in our how we became as humans and all that. That's why they don't want things changed at that time, and they still don't. They still want people to live a lie. They're not the only things we're hiding from the government. The whole alien thing altogether is a whole nother episode we'll do about. But these things are 12, 10 feet tall, and they're different than humans. Like, they're weird looking. Like, they showed some of their skulls. They're like they're just massive. They got like a indent on their forehead, though. It's really big. They're way different looking than what we think they look like. They're not stupid either, like people think. They're actually pretty smart. Like, Goliath was 10 feet, 10 inches tall, had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes. A lot of these Nephilim had that 6 fingers, 6 toes thing. I don't know what that was about. It was kind of weird. But Goliath was a soldier. He killed people. Was a warrior, and he got defeated because he underestimated David and God. But he got defeated. But he was not that stupid. He knew how to fight. He was just arrogant, and that's why he lost. But some of these creatures were nasty, dude. Like, some of them had horns. There's skeletons with these giant skulls with horns sticking out. They found out doing with these digs they do, they found like these are just giant, this massive skulls. They're 3 times, 4 times bigger than our body. And see, that's why I argue how big these things were, because there's even talks they found something that was 100 feet long, 100 feet tall, a skeleton that was bigger than a human, and they just don't want everybody to know about it. All I know is it's a very interesting story to me, because I've always been interested in the Nephilim. I had a friend that always talked to me about the fallen and the giants, and it's always been something that I've always liked, and I love the story. But do I think they exist? I do. I think they did exist. I think they may still be around. I think that, there's not an impossibility on that. It says they were real. It says that they exist. There's proof that they exist. It's just they don't want people to know the truth. They want to think we're crazy, and they probably, there's probably people saying right now, these guys are crazy. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. They probably watch some crazy-ass stuff on some YouTube channel or, Facebook, and they think there's giants running around. They're crazy. But no, this stuff really happened. Just like the 15-foot red-haired giant, he really attacked those soldiers, and he got killed. Not, like you said, one guy, you can question that, but 2 people, 3 people saying it, and there's actually an unknown soldier that said has made it clear too. He just didn't want his name mentioned, so there's actually 3 people who have said this thing happened. So, and it's kind of weird. It's always in Afghanistan, the Middle East, Iraq, because that's where, supposedly Eden started. Jesus was in Jerusalem. And, that's where a lot of people think the world the human species started anyway, around that area. So, and our ancestors, and they think the Nephilim might be some kind of ancestors or evolved into something what we were with them somewhere or another. They have something to do with our history back then. And I don't know what they were or what they exactly are, but I'll tell you this. Majority of the time when somebody says something exists, it usually has some truth to it. It may have been exaggerated like 10,000 fold, to what we have now. And that's how life is. Like, there's mermaids. People have been saying that for thousands of years. People still see them. Yes, they've probably been exaggerated what they look like, and that's probably really not. They're probably really nasty looking creatures, not women with big knockers. And they swim around and sing songs like the Little Mermaid. They probably don't do that, but they're probably really nasty creatures, and that's what I've heard. And, just like Bigfoot, a lot of people say, oh, that's fake, but come on, dude, there's been millions of sightings. Not everybody's going to be lying. So, like the Loch Ness Monster, millions of sightings. Dragons, people said, oh, they don't exist. Now they're finding proof they might have. Maybe not flew around in the sky and blew fire on everybody, but there's a possibility they exist. So, it's possible, and it's a really great story, especially because it comes from the Bible too. It's Bible's awesome altogether, but there's a lot of great stories out of there, and I really don't consider them stories; it's fact. But I don't know. What do you think, James?
Whenever you have multiple cultures that are not connected by geography, from different parts of the world, that all have the same creature in them, there's got to be something there. There are stories of giants in every culture in the world. All of us talk about giants in our past. There are histories of a war between mankind and giants where we actually tried to wipe them from the face of the earth. That's probably a pretty good reason why they're hanging out in caves where nobody knows where they are. Because the few that are left don't want to get killed. You know what I mean? I would think that might be a good reasoning behind hiding out. But every major culture has stories of giants. Think back to some of our popular fairy tales that we have. Jack and the Beanstalk. You had a giant who lived in a land of giants. Okay, according to the story I read you, according to that guy, America used to be that land of giants. They used to live here. And what did that giant in Jack and the Beanstalk do? He didn't just say, fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. He also ate people. And that's what the giants in history actually did. They ate people. And they tore shit up. They killed people. They were bad. Old boy said a very important thing earlier when he said they weren't good. They were mean. They were nasty. They were bad things. Yeah, they were. They would eat you. You know, they were not our friends. You know, I saw that movie BFG. Have you seen that? Old boy BFG. It's where you have this race of giants that eats people, and then you have this one giant who's a real friendly giant who is like trying to be friends with humankind and protect them from the other giants and all this stuff. I doubt that there was any BFGs in history. I bet you that all these giants were pretty much the same, and they're very dangerous. So that's a very important point to remember when we talk about giants.
I saw that movie.
When you talk about giants, you're thinking, oh, this is going to be really cool, you know? You got all these gigantic creatures, and imagine what they could do and all this kind of stuff, but also remember, they're going to eat you. I mean, they're not friendly at all. So that's a very important point to be made. And the whole idea of the war between mankind and giants, some of that comes from the Bible, some of it comes from different histories of different cultures all around the world. You have some of the history of England. You have, during the medieval times, them talking about it. You have, as far back as Egypt and ancient Rome, talking about it. And even in the histories of the Middle Eastern countries, you have stories of giants and stories of how mankind went to war with giants in order to kill them all off to protect mankind, basically. So there's a long history here. And anybody that says, oh, you're crazy, giants don't exist, that's dumb. You know what I mean? Anybody who says something like that, they don't know their histories. They don't know the Bible, you know? Because here you have, in a giant, you have a creature that is mentioned multiple times in the Bible. The Bible says emphatically and very, very clearly that these things absolutely exist. 100% they exist. You have multiple countries and multiple empires in which, in their histories, they talk about giants. And they talk about the fact that these things actually existed. Some even go as far as saying that mankind had an all-out war with giants. That as a species, we went to war against the giants to try to wipe them from the earth. So anybody who just has that knee-jerk reaction and says, oh, this is nuts, there's no giants, you idiots. You know, I think we would notice a 500-foot guy walking around. You know, I hear crap like that from people all the time. You don't know what you're talking about. You haven't done the research. You don't know what you're talking about. Now, you might say, well, you know, I know all those stories, but I think it's all hogwash. I don't believe it. That's a fair argument to make. If you just simply don't believe any of these histories, and you don't believe the Bible, that's your prerogative. But in that case, you have to believe that all the histories are wrong and the Bible is wrong completely. Because you can't believe, especially when you're talking about something like the Bible, you can't believe that part of it is true, but the rest of it isn't. You know what I mean? You can't say, well, I believe that Jesus died on the cross, and I believe that, you know, God created the heavens and the earth, but, you know, I don't believe all of it stuff in the Bible. I don't believe that David actually killed a giant. You know, I don't believe that Jonah was actually swallowed by a whale and kept alive in the belly of a whale. I don't believe that. I don't believe that they marched around the walls of Jericho until, you know, playing their horns and stuff until the walls crumbled. I don't believe that. If you don't believe the stories of the Bible, then you don't believe the Bible. Because if the Bible is the Word of God, okay, inspired by God, written by men, if you believe that the Holy Spirit entered mankind in order to write the Bible, which is literally the Word of God, if you believe that the Bible is true, that means that everything in there is true. You can't say, well, you know, the Bible is the Word of God, but there's a bunch of crap in there that's not right. It's false. You can't say that. Because if it's the Word of God, it's the truth. You can't believe those two things together. It just, they don't coincide. You can't say, on one hand, it's the Word of God, and Jesus is the Son of God and our Savior. God created the heavens and the earth, but yet I don't believe that Noah actually built an ark and put the animals on it and survived the great flood. I mean, there are people out there that say there wasn't even a flood, when we have scientific proof that there was a great flood that flooded the earth. Every single culture on earth has a story in their histories about a worldwide flood. So we know absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt it happened. But there are still people that'll say that it didn't happen. You know, that's one thing, especially when you're dealing with paranormal issues and paranormal ideas like this. You're going to be dealing with a lot of people that laugh and say it's stupid and it's not real and it doesn't make no sense. But here's the absolute truth. There are things that go bump in the night. Some of these things are actually real. And a lot of people don't want to accept that. A lot of people do not want to believe that any of these things actually exist. Even when they're proven wrong, time and time again, they still don't want to believe in any of it. When you're looking at like the cryptozoological side of things, okay? In that we're talking Nessie, we're talking Bigfoot, we're talking, you know, the giant squid, we're talking the silverback gorilla, we're talking all these creatures that are either now or at one time were considered myths and legends, that they did not exist. But now some of them we know do exist. But at one time, science said that they did not. And at one time, everybody said you were nuts if you said that they existed. Okay? The silverback gorilla, found in the Congo, was a myth according to the native peoples there. All the thinking people, all the scientists said, ah ha ha, you're idiots. There's no silverback gorilla, you're a dummy. That's just a myth, a legend by uneducated savages. Oopsie, we found one. We found a whole bunch now. I guess they do exist. We never got a, oh hey, sorry guys, we called you idiots. You're not idiots. Turns out you were right. No, you never get that. You just get you're an idiot. You know, the coelacanth was supposedly extinct for millions of years, died off in the time of the dinosaurs, until one washed up on the coast of Madagascar. Now all of a sudden, oh well, I guess they're not extinct after all, are they? The giant squid was something of legend, something that was an old sailor's tale, that if you believed in it, you were an idiot. You were silly, you were a conspiracy guy, you were nuts. Well, now, you know, we've had them washed up on the beaches, and they have multiple sightings on camera, underwater cameras. They even captured it on a deep water submersible. So now we know they exist. Time after time, all these things that people say do not exist, and they laugh at you for saying exist, we find that they exist. It's silly. You know, it's absolutely silly. People say that werewolves are just made up, that they don't exist. I did a show on the writer's block all about the werewolf witch trials. See, most people don't even know they existed. During the time of the witch trials in Europe, everybody's heard of the Salem witch trials? Well, there were also witch trials that went all across Europe. During that time period, when they were having those witch trials, They were having werewolf trials right alongside of them. A lot of the people that were accused of being witches were also accused of being werewolves. They actually had laws about being a werewolf. And you could be killed if it was found that you were a werewolf. But yet, people say that being a werewolf is just a silly thing. It's a modern story. It's not true. But it dates way back. You know, there's so many of these things that are like that. And the Nephilim is something that we have more evidence of than any of the other ones that we've talked about. But I guarantee you that just the idea that there are giants, I guarantee you there's going to be more people that laugh about that and say it's not true and it's a silly thing than any of the other stuff we talk about. You know, we could get on here and we could talk about ghosts all day long and people will believe it. You'll have some people that say ghosts aren't real, but the majority of people will believe it. We can talk about aliens and people will believe it. But for some reason, when you talk about giants, they think it's silly. But in all reality, it's not so silly after all, because it's mentioned in the Bible. They talk about it in the Bible that it's an absolutely true thing. We now have evidence that the Smithsonian destroyed skeletons. There are documents that prove that were released in court. We have video evidence of Nephilim. We have eyewitness testimony that United States military members killed a giant. The testimony came from the military members themselves. I don't know how much more proof we need other than a big giant laying on a table for everybody to look at and poke with a stick. You know, I mean, I think maybe that's the only way to convince some people. But this is one that there is a preponderance of evidence of. This is one that I'm going to say 1,000% I believe absolutely exists. There's no doubt at all in my mind that this thing exists. You know what I mean? And I don't think that it's something that died off long ago. I think that it's something that still exists today. I think there are giants out there. And I think that before too long, we're going to definitely know for sure that there are giants out there. Not only because these documents will be released, but also because I believe that we're coming towards the end of time anyway. I think that it's getting ready to be that kind of time where you're going to have to start thinking about heaven and hell and Armageddon and the whole nine. I think it's the end of days coming here before too long. I'm not going to tell you it's coming next week or next month or next year or the next 10 years, because the Bible says no man shall know. I don't know either. But everything that needed to happen before it has already happened. So I think that we're headed that direction. And the Bible does say the Nephilim will come back. So I guess we'll see, won't we? We will see if these things actually exist 100%. Because when you have a 500-foot giant thundering down your street, crushing cars with his big old feet, it's going to be kind of hard at that point to bury your head in the sand and say, nah, man, these things don't exist. You're all silly. You know what I mean? But I'm sure there probably will be a couple people that still do it. But we'll see what happens. You know, we really will see. I'll be interested to see if the Mandela effect is the gateway for these things to come back. You know, because we did a show on the Mandela effect on an episode of Staring the Abyss in the past. And basically, for those that don't know what the Mandela effect is, it's basically a multiverse theory to where they have actually destroyed our universe with CERN, and we instantly just kind of jump to another universe because energy never dies, it just changes form. So we went from our universe to a parallel universe right next to us where only a couple things are different, and that's why some of the names of things are different, and some of the things are different that we remember differently. That's the whole idea of the Mandela effect. So if you're talking parallel universes, maybe there's a parallel universe in which mankind did not wipe out the majority of these things, where they still roam the land and live among us in great numbers and great sizes. So maybe one day, maybe tomorrow, who knows, maybe a year from now, you wake up, eat your little bowl of Lucky Charms or whatever it is you do in the morning, get up, go out, get in your car to go to work, and on your way to work you see a 500-foot giant walking down the road. Who knows? The Bible says they're going to be back. I believe what the Bible says, so we'll see what happens. But it'll definitely be a very interesting day then. And I don't know, I guess I should be afraid of that, right? I mean, that would make sense to be afraid, but for some reason I'm not. I'm not afraid of it at all. Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see. You know, I don't know if I'll be here to see it, but if I am, it'll be interesting to see. What do you think, old boy?
You mean at the world coming to an end with giants and stuff? Yeah. I mean, it would be interesting to see. I don't know if I would want to be there, because I don't know if I want to see 500-foot giants jumping around, monsters coming from the sea, because it says the most evil things in the ever known will be existing at that time. So it isn't going to just be giants running around. You're going to have demons and whatever the hell weirdo stuff running around, you know, scorpions with lion tails, you know. Yes, it'd be something to see, but I don't know if I would really want to. You know, I'm not really scared of anything. You're not supposed to be scared of death. You're only supposed to be scared of God, but I don't know if I could handle seeing a 30-foot lion run around with a scorpion's tail and a 280-foot giant eating everybody. I don't think that's something I really want to see, but it would be crazy to see. It would be interesting, but, you know, it wouldn't be interesting if they started coming after me and you. You know, we're not scared, but I don't think there's much we can do unless we have guns in our hand to kill a 250-foot giant. You know, we're not going to beat them down, me and you. You know, we're probably going to get screwed and smashed. I wouldn't want to try to fight any of these guys or anything, but yeah, I believe that it could be a thing that comes in the end. I think we're going to have to fight them again. I believe that. I believe that there's something to do with the ending of the world, the Nephilim. There's something biblical about them. But what do you think about that?
How would you fight a 500? I mean, I guess if you have tanks and stuff like that, you could kill them. But just you hanging out on the street, how are you going to kill a 500-foot giant? You're pretty much toast. You know what I mean? I mean, this dude could swing like a whole tree, like it's a club. You know what I mean? And just squish you flat like a bug. I mean, there's really no way to fight any of these things, really. I mean, you're not fighting a Nephilim. You're not fighting a 30-foot lion with a scorpion tail. You're not fighting any of those kind of things. You're pretty much dead meat. So at that point, it's kind of just find yourself a nice spot and enjoy the show until one of them comes for you, basically. That's all you can really do. I mean, you can run and try to hide and all that stuff, but in all reality, how long is that going to last? You know what I mean? Eventually, something's going to find you and you're going to be dinner or whatever. So, but I don't know, man. I just think it's a crazy idea to think about, but it could happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could happen. You know what I mean? You never know. Especially if this whole parallel universe theory with the Mandela effect is true. If that is fact, then who knows what the hell could happen tomorrow? You know, we're actually living in an episode of Sliders, in all reality, if that's a true theory. Because if we're sliding from universe to universe every time CERN blows the universe up, then who knows what the next universe could bring. The next one we go into, Elvis could be alive again. You know, the one after that could be ruled by monkeys, like in Planet of the Apes or something. The one after that, dinosaurs could still be roaming the earth. Who knows? And that, to me, is, yes, it's terrifying, but it's also very exciting and intriguing and interesting. You know what I mean? Because I live for this kind of stuff, man. I love the cryptic creatures. I love the things that go bump in the night. I love those stories, and I love researching the lore on all these things and trying to figure out if they exist or don't exist, or, you know, how they operate, what happens. And to me, I mean, that's like going to Disneyland. You know what I mean? Yeah, it has a very morbid end. You know, you're not going to go home happy like you do after you leave Disney. Well, I don't know if you come home happy after Disneyland. To me, Disneyland would kind of suck. You stand in line all day in the heat to ride rides that aren't even all that fun, and you have to look at big goofy characters all day. So I don't know if that's a great example, but it's not like having a fun day out. I mean, the end of it is going to suck, you know, but the interesting stuff you'll get to see before you die will be pretty cool. I mean, because think about it, we're all going to die. That's really the only thing in life that's a definite, is eventually you're going to die. So we're all going to be there at some point. So it's all about how you go out, I guess, right? So at least you get a show before you go. You know what I mean?
I guess if I'm going to go out that way, I guess it would be pretty badass to fight giants and scorpions and what with lion tails, or I mean lion tails with scorpion, tails. Sorry, guys. Goblins, whatever the hell is running around. A giant. I don't really think there's much you can do about that. I don't know what you're going to shoot with a tank or what. You're going to run your ass. You're going to go hide. I'm not going to try to fight a 500-foot giant. I don't think you are either, James. I don't. I think you're going to run the other way if you see something that running around. So, whatever is going to happen at the end of the world, we're going to see more than giants. You're going to see dragons. You're going to see, whatever is going to try to eat you. And they're probably going to do it. You just got to fight to your, the way I see it is I'm going to die on my shield. I'm not going to go running. It's probably going to be something crazy that you never thought you were going to ever see, and this thing's going to come, But I don't know. I think it would be awesome. But in some ways it is kind of crazy. It probably, you just don't know what to think. It happens. And then you're like in such shock.
It'd be a hell of a story, though, wouldn't it? It'd be one hell of a story for the afterlife. You'd be hanging out with everybody in heaven or purgatory or wherever you go after this thing, and be like, hey, how'd you die? Cancer. How'd you die? Car wreck. How'd you die? I wasn't watching. I was playing on my phone, walked out in front of a bus. How'd you die? Dragon. A dragon ate me. That's the coolest way to go out.
Yeah, that would be pretty crazy. Yeah, how'd you die? Oh, a giant smashed me or ate me, or a three-headed lizard attacked me, and I fought it, cut off both his heads, but his third one got me, but I still killed him, a hydra. Something crazy like that. Yeah, that would be awesome to talk about in heaven. I don't know. I think that would be the way I want to go. How about you?
Yeah, it would have to be something cool. I wouldn't want to die like cowering in a hole somewhere, hiding. I just can't see myself doing that. That would not be the way I'd want to go out. And I'm not trying to act like a tough guy or anything like that for everybody listening. It's not about that at all, because I'm not fighting a giant. It's going to kill me, no problem. Most of these things are going to kill me, right? I'm not saying I'm going to kill a giant. I'm going to be this Conan the Destroyer kind of guy. That's not going to happen. I'm going to die. But I don't know, man. I'm not a guy that runs. I've never run my whole life. I don't run from anything. I'm the guy that stands his ground no matter what. If I'm in a horror movie and Jason is coming after us, I'm the idiot that tries to fight Jason. You know what I mean? I'm the guy that ends up getting chopped up because I'm out there punching Jason in his hockey mask. You know what I mean? I'm that guy. So I just don't see myself running. Now, a 500-foot giant, I'm not going to stand there and go toe-to-toe with it. Just like Old Boy said, I'm going to try to get away, obviously. But, I'm going to go out fighting a lot of these things. I'm not going to die hiding in a hole. You know what I mean? I'll try to maneuver and get away if I can, but I'm not just going to go hide somewhere and let something just eat me. You know what I mean? When it comes time, I'm going to fight. But most likely I'll end up dead. I mean, maybe a goblin. I might be able to take a goblin. Who knows? You know what I mean? Some little thing like that that's kind of my size. I might have a chance, at least. But, yeah, a giant or a dragon, you're pretty much toast, man. You're not getting away from that. Well, this has been a very interesting and fun show. I love talking about stuff like this. If you guys want a complete history of the Nephilim and a whole bunch of detail, me and Old Boy did an episode of the Writer's Block that I mentioned earlier. It's on the YouTube channel. So just go back in the videos a little ways and find the Writer's Block episode on the Nephilim. It's also in the playlist on the Writer's Block playlist, so you can find it in there. And check that show out, because we give a ton of information in that show, and we talk about a lot of it. This show was mainly to talk about the new evidence, but I kind of wanted to do another overview of the basic information for the people that didn't catch the first show. But this has been a real fun one. It flew by, and I really enjoyed doing it. We're going to do a show next week on demons. So that's going to be a super interesting show. I hope you guys check that out. We're going to talk about some of the major demons. We're going to talk about making deals with demons. We're going to talk about demon possession. We're going to talk about demons taking over objects such as Ouija boards and stuff like that. It's going to be a very, very fun and interesting show. So I hope you guys check that out. Old Boy, do you have any shout outs or anything you want to give before we go, brother?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to all the listeners. I love you guys. Appreciate the love you give us. Check us out on James Hershey Jr.'s YouTube. page if you guys want to listen to our shows, our podcast. We no longer do Mixler anymore. So just to let you guys know, so you guys don't keep going on to the Mixler page to try to listen to it live, we're doing podcasts now. Maybe down the line we'll do something different, but that's for now, just to let you guys know. I want to thank the troops and, all of our fans. I love you guys. And Unearthed Films and the American Guinea Pig series, I want to give you guys a shout out. Marcus Cook, love you guys. Remember, you only live once, and live it the best you can. Have a good night, Misfits, Sugar Ladies, and Demon Hunters. I love you.
And I'd like to give a shout out real quick to Valley Vapors in Woodstock, Virginia. People that have listened to a lot of our shows know that I've mentioned them before. I've done a lot of work with them to help our vets when they come back from war, to get them what they need and help with veteran suicide and stuff like that. We do a lot of events for Active Heroes and Carry the Fallen, trying to help our troops. We're working on a new thing now that we're doing, where we're trying to provide relief for homeless vets and for homeless people in general in Washington, D.C., because I live in Virginia, so I'm close to Washington, D.C. That's the major city next to me. So we're doing an event where we're trying to raise as much as we can and provide them with as much support as we can. I've already had a couple meetings about it and set up distribution channels and everything to where we can get the stuff to the people. So that's something we're working on right now. In about a week, we're going to be making our first delivery up to DC, and we're going to be bringing them food and clothing and, supplies like, toothbrush, toothpaste, medicines, whatever they need basically to make their life better, blankets, pillows, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to have a truckload of stuff going up to DC to help the homeless up there on next Saturday, I believe is the day that we're taking it up. So that's going to be super cool. So I want to give a shout out to all the guys at Valley Vapors for everything you guys do for the vets and to help everybody else. Thank you. I love you guys, and I'm honored to be able to be a part of it and to be able to, in some small way, try to help our veterans and make their lives better. And what I would say to the audience is, don't just pray for change, be the change. Make a difference in somebody's life. You may not have the means to send a truckload of supplies to the homeless, okay? You may not have the financial ability to do that, but that's okay, because you can do something as simple as smile at somebody and make their day better. We have to start loving each other again in this world, and especially in this country. We've got to love each other again, man. I mean, that's what Jesus said is the commandment above all else, is to love your neighbor as you love yourself and love God with all your heart and soul. We have to love each other again. That's what it's all about. So don't just pray for change, be the change. I love you guys. Until we speak again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. Bye-bye.